Okay. Today we are very happy to have Professor SYau to give the keynote speech. Let me introduce a little bit information about Professor Yao. Professor Yao is currently the professor of Arizona State University. Before joining Arizona State University, he was a professor at University of Florida and Northwestern University. He has been a pioneer in the software engineering area, so everybody probably know him more or less. He was the founder of a very famous conference called ComSec. It's also an IEEE conference. He has been very active in IEEE. He was the past president of Computer Society. He's also an IEEE fellow and an AAS fellow. So let's give him a big hand to welcome him.
Use this? Okay. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, right. This all right, Yao? Yes. That's right. What's that? Oh. Yeah. And that's why it's the bone. That's one word. This one word? Only for the other one. Okay, that's okay. I use my computer. Okay, good morning. Good morning. Well, I have attended many conferences. This is the first conference I have seen. They give us such a treatment for keynote speaker. First, they start with the music. And then show the slides. So, fantastic. And thank you for the organizing committee. Very nice. And also I'm very glad to participate in the conference in this facility. In fact, I gave a talk here about 35 years ago. So, very glad to come back. And all right, so today what I'm going to share with you some ideas about the human factor. Well, you can see how important the human factor is. We always worry about the machine, software, hardware, and application. But once you get to the practical use, doesn't matter whether you're a developer or manager or customer, right? Human involved. And I remember, 30 years ago, when computer became very, very powerful in one of the major conferences, National Computer Conference, and the reporter asked us, say, hey, computer getting more and more powerful. Do you think that one day the computer will control human being? Then we all become subject under the rule of the computer. I say no. So I give them not a lecture, more or less a discussion. Say, we always the master. Not only we develop the software and the system, the application the way we want, but we also want to have the technology to serve us. Fortunately, the IT technology changes very fast, and we are all benefit, and we are in the profession. Never worry about out of job if you are good, okay? And so I always told my student, say, you have chosen a very exciting career, but you have to keep learning. Don't give up. If you get an A plus, even today, if you don't keep up, after 3 years, you become below average computer science. If you wait for 10 years, you will be out of job, you couldn't find a job. Okay? So even during the economy declining, but the computers, the IT, as you know, the professional, the job opportunity always go up. But the important thing is we are in a very challenging and dynamic area that we need to keep up. So human factor, relatively speaking, well, we always consider human factor. Even during the old day when we have the first large-scale computer, mainframe, right? But at that time, it's a limited. Say, hey, you write a program and you submit and so forth. But as the technology proceeds, you can see the technology become more pervasive and application more diverse. And the user and the developer and everybody, developer also user, right? User for development. Expecting more and to serve us. Especially during the last 10 years or so, and due to the rapid development of a wireless technology, that's why our iPad, all these powerful mobile devices come out, and plus the virtualization technology, we have a large-scale computer, powerful computer, cluster computer, but how many users can use at the same time, okay? And for different applications. It's not just run some computational intensive problem that you need a large scale computer only used for 1 or 2 major users. But this is, we put the computing resources, serve hundreds of thousands of users at the same time, and different, okay? So that's the virtualization. And then, obviously, the internet make the IT so pervasive, and the demand and everything grows so fast. So when we look at the software, in the old days when we develop software, what we do? We ask the user, hey, what do you want? Requirement. And then try to understand completely, and then proceed, and then go ahead step by step, usually the waterfall model, that kind of a concept. And of course, that gave a lot of trouble, and then until the object-oriented programming come up and help us to capitalize the unnecessary things, the detail inside the object, and then only worry about the interface and the integration. Well, when we deal with larger scale software, obviously, many lines of codes and a lot of tests and a complicated data flow, control flow, and so forth. So the we have to use this. There's a major breakthrough in the software. And then due to the progress in both hardware and the software, they put the resources together. Nowadays, when we develop a software, we're really talking about service. Software as a service. You probably all have heard about. Okay? But that term, for people not updated, still difficult to accept. Say, how can software be service? Software is so complicated and so difficult to use and so difficult to develop and maintain. Well, we have to do that in order to make the things useful and diverse. As far as the end user is concerned, it's transparent. Why do they need to know all the detail? But the user want to satisfy all the kind of quality of service. In order to, later on I will discuss that. In order to satisfy that, you have to have a very dynamic configuration, adaptive property, and so forth. Well, you also talk about cloud computing. We talk about cloud computing. The basis of cloud computing essentially is special kind of service computing, okay? Except for the large resources, storage, processing, and communication, everything together. Now, when talk about human factor, it's a very diverse and very complicated. So what I'm going to do is focus on develop trustworthy service-based system. I'm going to briefly review the, and then talk about why we need to consider human factor, and talk about what are our current state, give an example, and discuss the future research. There are a lot of them. This is just emerging. As we all know, software-based, service-based system that's based on service-oriented architecture. You don't need to know that, but it's just a term. I think yes, the concept is very, very simple. Okay. This has been adopted, migrated into a lot of applications. E-commerce. Actually, the cloud computing people talk about. That special term not come from computer science people, not come from engineering. Where it come from? From the business community. Okay? You think about the business. What they do? They all wanted to get a large amount of data. Okay? They don't have the resource. Even I don't just mean the money. The capability to hire top-notch IT people. The best IT people, what kind of a company they work for? Computer company, IT service, right? That's the mainstream of the business, and it's a mainstream for the career development for IT professionals. So even the bank get a lot of money, give you a lot of money. They may not be high, the best people, especially the technology develops so fast. You are very good at now. If you don't keep up in 1 year, you will be not be able to compete with your competitor. So e-commerce in the business community, and we also see the processing of transaction in commerce using e-commerce has increased 1,000 times by using the service computing and cloud computing. Healthcare information system, homeland security, and other collaboration. Well, this is obvious, but why collaboration? Collaboration is not only say, hey, we research collaboration. When you do the business, okay, now the business is global-wise. Certainly R&D, no boundary. Even though you have a patent protection and so forth, that's for you to protect your intellectual property. But you need a lot of interaction. Because no matter how you are, how good you are, you cannot always have the best talent in the world at your place, right? So you need to collaborate. And a lot of information you need. So when talk about the collaboration, then it's a distributed a lot of data, and confidentiality. We collaborate today. Maybe in a couple of weeks, we compete for the same different project, then we are competitive. I cannot trust, say, hey, give all the confidential information to you, and then when we compete, I get back what you already have, right? So, and also look at the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. How many countries participate? You can never say, hey, I don't want it. You participate, right? Even though they are willing to give the money and the military support and so forth. So you accept them. Do you trust them? Varies a degree, depending on which country. And how you integrate the work together. Well, we are fighting terrorists with the same goal. So all these things, without the service-based system and a cloud system, it would be very difficult. Okay? It doesn't mean impossible, but very difficult. So look at the service. When we use a computer, obviously, we need a software. Well, what's the software do? Software, essentially, you provide the input data, and then you have some processing, get the result you want, right? It's a service. So before we talk about object-oriented system, now we broaden that, the concept to service. So, and talk about the service-to-service interaction. So we need a standard interface for accessing capability offered by various providers. There are many providers available with a service agreement. Okay, what price you pay and service you get, a quality you need, and so forth. But you need a standard interface. Then service-based system composed to form workflow. When talk about the application software task, essentially it's a workflow. It's a business process. Okay? And to provide functionality not provided by individual service. If an individual service, then just use one service. But usually for large scale software, and most of the applications involve multiple servers. There are a lot of advantages. And these are few I mentioned for the especially in the dynamic environment where human factor is very, very important. Okay. Interoperation of a heterogeneous system, all sort of system, mobile device, laptop, okay, PC, station, supercomputer, and all those. And maybe in different domain, different organization, they have to work together. And when you talk about the workflow, the application software, rapid composition, instead of say, hey, like in the past when you have a larger scale software developed, take a half year or 1 year or more, and you even don't know whether you get it. But now, you take the individual services, put them together through the standard interface and so forth, okay? From distributed service, not one place, all over the place, through internet and other network. Adaptation, this is very important. Can you imagine many years ago, 30 years ago, we talked about adaptive software? Come on, you're joking, right? You tell me what developer I develop, the one you want. If you want to change it, sign another contract for modification. So give you another version. Not anymore. The technologies should be able to provide the adaptive, modifiable software in runtime. If you cannot do it, your competitor can do. You're out of business. How about adaptation? Dynamic application requirement for larger scale software application involve distributed application. Usually they are dynamic. Dynamic in what sense? The traffic workload different, okay? The condition of the system different. Some part of the system may not work all the time. Then you have backup and other ways, or the user, especially nowadays we talk about security, worry about. You start suspect some part of the system you use, hey, may infringe my, get a unauthorized access to my confidential information, right? You just suspect. But it doesn't matter. In order to protect, you start changing the security policy. What's the security policy? The rules, how to protect, who have access and who will not have. And in order to ask what kind of credential and what kind of process they have to go through. That's a security policy. They change all the time, especially in critical applications. Not to play games, okay? And so the environment change, and we have a multiple QoS, quality of service. Not necessarily with the available system resources, you cannot certify all the multiple QoS for all the application use your system. Maybe everything works perfectly, you can, because you develop that way. Provide the capacity. But you know, the world is not perfect, something go wrong, or some traffic, heavy load, and then how you're going to modify the system. Still can provide, even not all the certify all the QoS for all the users, but at least those are critical, high priority consideration will be certified. Now, we talk about trustworthy. Well, trustworthiness is more complicated, broader than security. Okay? Involve human. Trust. So, and we need a trustworthy service-based system for critical application. Depending on your application, it doesn't mean we have the good technique to provide very good trustworthiness so you blindly apply, because that will cost you a fortune. You may not want it, right? Depending on the user, the type of application. Now, why we need to consider trustworthiness? Trustworthy, especially for service-based system. There's over public and private network, as well as mobile network. They are more open, susceptible to attack, especially you are doing important thing. If you are not doing important thing, nobody cares, right? Okay, interaction involve unknown entities. You get a larger scale and many users and many applications and through many servers and so forth. You don't know the entity. So you just assume you don't know them. Many of them. Dynamic and pervasive. I already talked about the dynamic. Pervasive. Okay? Laptop you can carry. Now with an iPad and a more powerful device, you can hand carry everywhere. Right? Embedded the system all over the place. So it's a very pervasive. It gives you great convenience, great reason that you increase your productivity, everything, but also it's open for attack security, more complicated. Okay? Large scale and cross-domain service collaboration. We already talked about service collaboration, a lot of collaboration, but a service collaboration, routine. I use your service. If you are available, I need it. Okay? Then we can collaborate right away. Of course, if we already have a service agreement, then great. Even we don't have it, we should have it very quickly. But across domain, different type of domain, and it's a large scale. Distributed control, it's not a central control. Central control, you have an advantage, disadvantage, but the most advantage, important advantage is you are under your control at one place. But for this, it's a distributed all over the place. Dynamic QoS expectation for multiple workflow. Since we have a multiple user, multiple application, obviously, they expect the QoS are different. okay? And also the dynamic environment and so forth. What are the major aspects when we consider trustworthy service-based system? Well, everything here we already know, but human become more important. Okay? Not just the user. Obviously, user and the collaborator, they are the primary. Okay? Many people involved. But also involve a provider. When you delegate such a critical application, involve sensitive data of your organization, well, you want to make sure. It's not to say, hey, the company is very reputable and so forth, that's good enough. Why? The company may have got a lot of employees, a lot of operators. The individual, how can you ensure? Even the company themselves cannot ensure, right? So this, and also the user and provider and so forth, also involved, we are human. When you get tired, and when you are depressed, when you are very happy, and very optimistic, you make a different decision. And that way, in using the system, the service, the application, and that will have a serious consequence to the performance of the system, the result you got, right? Insider, outsider, when we talk about security. Inside, there is threat. It's more serious than outside. You talk about the break-in and so forth. The data show majority are inside. People change, may be very happy now, but not next month, not necessarily next year, especially during the dynamic environment, working environment change, the business environment change, and also human feeling. Say, my colleague, and we work equally hard, I think I work at least as good as him, but why I didn't get enough raise, enough bonus? Jealousy. All those human feelings will affect their behavior, right? And because the system involves a lot of human, and this will be needed to be considered. Well, when we talk about then, it's not a pure computer technology, right? Certainly, some of them you can see, but these are primary system technology. Later on, we'll talk about involving human, okay, the factor. Various system technology are needed to develop trustworthy. Security, trust management, okay, situation awareness, because they are dynamic. The situation change just like you're a human being, okay? You walk into the room, it's a different environment. You're feeling different. When you walk on the hallway and go to the parking lot and the street, it's different. Same as a system. The workload is dynamic, the operating environment dynamic, the user are dynamic, the user expectation dynamic, because it involves many users. So you need a situation awareness. Situation awareness, first thing is you need to monitor what's going on and see. Then you need to analyze whether the change will affect your operation, your performance, your service, your quality, and then figure out how to adapt. Okay? If you affect. So you need a runtime adaptation, runtime, while the system is running. So you need a monitoring and QoS and analysis of QoS and the requirement trade-off. If you cannot satisfy all of them, what you do? It doesn't mean shut down the system, right? You try your best to satisfy. Usually, the user will specify what's my highest priority. For example, I give you the whole contract to manage my data processing IT operation. Certainly, I can tell you what are more important than the others. If your system do not have the capability, resources to satisfy certain, then certain tasks can be postponed. Always the case, right? Okay. So then you have a trade-off. And then you decide, the system decide the resource allocation to provide the support. Challenges, well, you can see it's very difficult. So some of the challenges are system, and we already know, and we deal with that all the time. And some, we have to involve human, consider more in the human factor. So interaction among services may have unforeseen consequences in trust, security, QoS, and the risk. What are the problems? You have untrusted and malicious services. How do you know the service? Okay, usually in the service directory, specify what it does, what's the quality, the response time, right? And accuracy and throughput. And but are the data real? Why? You say that's from the well-known company. You trust them. Most of the time you do. But there's no guarantee, right? If you look at your contract, just like you buy anything, what kind of guarantee give you? Try the best, just so like you buy a car, right? If it broke down, fix it, free. Unless it's really bad, then they replace a new car. But the damage incurred in using the car is not covered. No insurance covered, right? Well, for some specific thing you can, like a body injury and a collision, that kind of thing. But in terms of loss of your business and other things. Okay, so we have, because the service comes from multiple organizations and distributed, and you cannot assure it's a trustworthy, okay? And it may have a malware inside. Of course, they're not going to tell you. but nobody say they guarantee they don't have it, right? If they cannot guarantee what's the consequence. So in addition, you have intermediate result generated during service interaction may reveal your sensitive data. Remember, we talk about workflow, distributed system, service-based system. You take a service from different places. And you may have a communication, involve network, okay? And in the transmission, you can encrypt, decrypt, and so forth. There's some very good, give you quite a very good protection. But once you process, reach the computer, you have to decrypt, right? Any gap from the input to the output, if you have any gap not protected, then that's a possibility for getting an intruder to hack your system, right? Trustworthiness of service provider. Now, this is one thing. Normally, we don't question. Just like you buy a computer from reputable manufacturer, right? But normally, it's fine. But if you are really involved more and more critical application, involve the sensitive information in your organization and so forth, and involve many users and so forth, this is what you do. Reputation is one thing. It's a dynamic. Some service provider reputation getting better, some getting worse. Trustworthiness, same thing. It doesn't mean, of course, we only deal with a trustworthy service provider. If they are not trustworthy, they are already on the blacklist and so forth, and nobody do business with them. But even those on your good service provider list, but they are not completely trustworthy, right? You have a lot of insider problem and others. Okay, this had multiple QoS. It's not just one, not just worry about security. You worry about performance. You worry about the result. You worry about the availability, how fast you get, right? So from multiple users and for different applications, obviously then you have a lot of requirements. And the runtime trade-off among expected QoS requirement, we have to consider. It's not to say you develop such a large system or powerful system for one application or for one user. For example, like we all know, security protection, encryption, decryption, or other mechanisms, quite often it's a computational intensive. That means it requires more computing power. Okay? And requires certain sacrifice of other QoS, like the throughput and decrease, keep a certain amount, service delay, and so forth, with the available resource. Available resource, that itself is dynamic. It's not static because of different users and the different applications. Okay? And obviously, everything comes down is cost, usability, and efficiency. And talk about the environment, dynamic change. We already mentioned it. But what kind of a difficulty we have with the dynamic environment? It's difficult to assess the trust and the risks because it's a dynamic, changing, okay? And need a situation awareness due to dynamic trust and risk. Well, this is not a small thing, okay? And need adaptive enforcement of a security policy. If you have a security policy, you cannot enforce what's the use? No use. So you must have a enforcement. While your security policy is changing, then obviously your enforcement also have to keep up. And the information needed for making decisions regarding trust was usually distributed on multiple services and organizations. It's not one guy, one entity can decide everything because it's involved multiple organizations. So this means a need a cooperative decision-making, involve delegation, policy, composition with a multiple organization. Different organizations may have a different security policy. Operating procedure, okay? Since I have to require you to certify my security policy and operating procedure. And you have a multiple, then you have to compose it to one so that the service organization can certify it. Collaborative QoS management, risk assessment, and trust evaluation. Trust itself is changing, right? Dynamic. And need efficient enforcement for distributed security policy. And so this is quite difficult, especially for distributed system and dynamic. And you need a protection against various entities, many entities, including service provider. It doesn't mean we don't trust our service provider. We trust to a certain extent, right? But if you are really concerned about your information handling and sensitivity, then you have to be worried about, concerned about. Normally, when we talk about the service system, you know how that works. If I develop some application workflow, I analyze what I need. I need this service, that service, this. So I go to the service directory. All the services available to this, to me, I can find. And usually, you don't get a 100% match, but you'll get a certified, provide the functionality and quality you need, but not necessarily all of them. So you have a multiple service, maybe 4. Among the 4, which one is better? Well, of course, arbitrarily you can pick one, randomly. But that may not be very good. There are some criteria. The difference in your different choice, certain choice will make a difference. So how to select most appropriate services and compose them to satisfy both functional and QoS requirements of various users. At the same time, ensure the overall system trustworthiness and security. That's not easy. Okay? So we need, when we talk about the trustworthiness and security, it's not a black-white, just a 0-1. Either secure or not secure. It's another case, right? You have got a different security level and so forth. And trust is the same thing. That's why there are a lot of study. And still it's a classical problem. So we need a meaningful and a qualitative metric for trustworthiness, security, and various there are other attributes of the overall system. How we run the service. We have multiple services. We need to run them. It's not just arbitrary. The consequence can be quite different. And then identify the best. What's the best? The developer is also user, okay? The developer will specify and to satisfy their requirement. Now, human factor. Well, human factor, everybody understands human factor. We are human, right? Anything the human make a decision, influence will affect the result. That's a human factor. So, human factor is a physical, psychological, or cognitive property of an individual. Or we talk about a community, an individual in a community, which is specific to humans and the influences on technological system as well as their application. This definition obviously is dealing with a technological system and application. That's what we are concerned, not talk about general society issue, right? Example, look at these human factor. Influence. Hey, I have certain influence on you. He has certain influence on you, right? And the influence is different. And the consequence can be very serious. You listen to me, may not listen to other people, right? And I can convince you much easier than other people. And interest. What's your interest? Human, even though you work for the group, work for the company, the company got a certain objective, but you are individual also getting it. Relationship. Collaboration, competition, all this may affect the trust value. Okay? And later on I will show you. And the opinion. Okay? Good opinion, think you very highly, negative or neutral, very supportive or not supportive. And the knowledge, expertise. I'm an expert in this area. So my opinion, most people will listen or agree. Or somebody does not have the expertise. Hey, what you talk about? Right? Reputation, so that wisdom, physical and psychological factor like a stress when you're tired, fatigue, and fear, happy, all these are human factors. Why we needed to consider? We consider human factor on everything. Okay? And later on I was discuss what kind of human factor we consider up to now regarding the IT, regarding the service-based system. The cyber system become more powerful, obviously, and the application become more diverse and pervasive. That means what? The user getting more close. It's no longer say, hey, I developed something, I delivered to somebody, and then expect the result back. And why you're processing that, I don't worry about, right? But it's getting very pervasive. You have an iPad, you have mobile device, you check all the time. And you may change your idea and your expectation. Okay? Human factors are increasing influential on the quality and the efficiency of generating results, obviously. Okay? More embedded and more pervasive. I talk too slow. And application must address multiple quality aspects expected by many users. Okay? Usually security, privacy, and other things. Now, when we talk about this human factor in this sense, there are three levels. The first level, direct human and the human relation, like a collaboration among users, and an indirect human and a human relation, like a service. The service provider provides the service, I use the service, right? It's an indirect, it's not human to human. On the other hand, it's a human, still the user and the service provider. And when you first time use, you don't have much information based on past data. Right? And then human in a community, there's influence among users. You are in one organization, or you are from the same country, or you have the same profession, right? That's a form of community. And a community among them certainly got a certain influence. The knowledge sharing among the user of the system, and also match service user interest with service. So all this, what? Like you buy things. You don't know whether it's good or bad. You ask your friend. Your friend also uses iPad or something, right? That itself is an example. Challenge. For the directives, how we quantify human factor. We already talked about difficulty to quantify. We don't have a good way to quantify trust, security, but talk about human factor. Usually, fatigue, like I'm tired, or I'm not tired, binary. But that's too simple, right? When you want to get into more detailed study. So, and talk about the workload. Talk about the learnability. Very easy to learn. And attention, vigilance, human relation. Okay, I like you, I don't like you, or something, or we're a competitor. And human performance, human reliability, stress, individual difference, aging, safety, all this. Well, not all of them you need to consider. But in certain applications, these things become critical, right? Depending on your user group, depending on your application. So how human factors affect human themselves? Here's an example. Like in a service-based system, the provider uploads their service application, then the user search the directory and for their service-based system, and then select this they use. Obviously, you worry about the requirement, the quality of the service, but also I worry about trustworthiness, whether this is dependable. Okay? Because it may be you're very good at at this time, but I'm not going to just use it for this one day or once 1 week. It's a long term, right? And may the system keep learning. Then you worry about the trustworthiness. And the challenge, how can a user choose a trustworthy service? And then related human factors, including human relations, stress, and the feedback, they all come into the play. And then challenge, how do the human factors from one person affect others? And how do the human factors from other person affect one person? A person may have a different idea, then everybody try to convince that person. Huh? And how do the human factor from one person in one community spread the information or the through the service-based system used by the community? All this need to be considered. Okay, so examples, like it's easy to user find their match service and application. It's not so easy, okay? But there are certainly, even you find, then it's also difficult for a service provider to introduce them. I have a very good product. I have the resource to do a better job. And I want to get into the business. That's also not easy. Right? And what are the challenges? How to incorporate human factor to match all the service user match with all the service application automatically and efficiently. Well, so in the service directory, besides the standard information, you also provide other things. Like we choose our hotel, as you know. You check the past, the people give what's the evaluation of the hotel, right? They have a lot of influence on how you make a decision which hotel you choose. But this needs to be done automatically and efficiently. That's why you need this quantification and process. So the related human factor like influence, interest, opinion, and human factor relationship, they all need to be considered. What? How much time I have? Okay, I don't have much time. I'm not going to, well, I will emphasize the human factor aspect. So incorporating human factor in developed cyber system and application. So far, the research, what we have, primarily conducted by, once you talk about human factor, why, you guys, computer science people, what you know human factor? You don't know. So the people in psychology, sociology, they say, we are the expert, right? That's exactly what happened. And what we talk about is primarily talk about the user interface, how to make things much easier to use, right? Availability and that kind of thing. But really, that's the current state. And that's why we needed to collaborate with them. But you know, collaboration in different domains is very difficult. A lot of difficult than you collaborate with the people in the computer science or engineering. Now, I'm not going to go through this because we don't have time. And these are more computer science and the system oriented. Okay, here's one thing. Trust estimation. All right? Now, trust itself, how we quantify trust, already have a problem. Very few work. Okay, we developed some flexible trust model for distributed service infrastructure, which had a preliminary result, and I do some experiment. And then there are other people, you know, work on the trust computing and so forth. And here, the latest one, we talk about improved trust estimation. What? The goal is what we do. We improve trust estimation in service-based systems by incorporating human factor, as well as a QoS profile. QoS profile, people already use. But a human factor involves computation and collaboration, and especially in these days, the collaboration is very popular. We need a trust management, okay, to estimate the service provider's trustworthiness so that the user can decide whether to accept the services provided by the provider. That's what you need. Not just based on a paper or book, what the information they provide, all good. Usually, people wanted to say good things about them, right? But how about trust value? That's it. And there are some work on trust estimation, but usually limited to similarity of user profile and based on pairwise trust relation. Well, that's one way you look at it. But the trust is more than pairwise. It can be multiple and transitive, right? And so that's what we talk about. We incorporate two common human factors. They are very important to estimate the trust value. Competition and collaboration. That's an interpersonal relation. And as well as the standard information, you have a QoS profile. Well, there's a network model, because it's a network, these nodes are the service provider, and these edges, they represent competing or collaboration. And then, depending on your application, the user, you can add a weighting factor on these edges. So talk about a transaction. A transaction is not say you have a request and you process then finish. Also, you add a feedback phase. This is the same as, so you get a survey of the user, okay? Then you update your information. Well, of course, if you are in the business, little while, then you get a very good user feedback. That's a plus. Should beef up increase your trust value. Otherwise, your trust value should go down. And the information recorded, what do we record? Depend on anything required by the user. There are many things. You only choose those you are interested or important to your application. So you have a claimed QoS profile and a feedback QoS profile. And the claim that's provided by the service provider, the feedback is by the service user in the feedback phase. All right, so we represent this, and then initially we consider these, okay, accuracy and the delay and the throughput. One of the reasons we choose this have not include security because the metric, okay? These are more easy to determine. And here is the claimed QoS provide and feedback. So initially, you don't have much information. So you just based on the historical transaction of this regarding for the trust value to compute the trust value of the service. And then you start update the trust value of the service provider in current transaction, and update the trust value of all other, not just individually, but also there are a lot of other interaction, okay, in your workflow and so forth. So you take into consideration. So here's the process. Here you have the service-based system, and you have collect the log the file, the data the log provided into the file, the profile evaluation module. And this module processes the transaction to extract the QoS profile. QoS profile depends on the user and and the application. So then you have the trust refinement module calculate the trust value of service provider based on QoS profile. Now you consider the network model representing the competition and the collaboration. Okay, so here, and then the existing, what you already have the trust value, provide here, then you get the trust, make the update, then provide into the. So here, the estimated trust value are disseminated to the service provider to incorporate the competition and the collaboration in the workflow. And then this will be goes, okay. Here you update, estimate, and then you update this, okay? So what do we have? The effect of a QoS profile. If the feedback of the QoS profile is better than its corresponding claim by the service provider, then obviously it's a more trustworthy, and you increase this. And otherwise, you decrease the estimated trust value of the service provider. Okay, so you have the claimed quality factor profile, QoS profile. Okay, then here you say this determined by the administrator. Actually, the administrator considers the particular application, implement the application. Get a more idea. Depending on what kind of quality. Some of the quality, the value bigger is better. Some of the quality, the value smaller is better. Like a speed, throughput, right? Smaller is better. And you tell, so that's why this is depend on the application. And then we provide the update and look at the sign. Okay, we use this formula. And then compare the claimed profile and the feedback profile. And then this is the overall score of a comparison, whether it is a positive or negative. So consider all the signs as well as the for all the quality aspect. So if M is positive, then the feedback of this is better than the claim, and otherwise the feedback is worse than the claim. So then the improvement of the trust value is by this formula. Okay. Now here we have this factor. This is the parameter for adjusting the effect of this. Here, in a lot of these studies, it's not like a very algorithm, very precise. You have to use your judgment. Just like in cost estimation in developed software, there are many cost models. Some people use it very well based on their domain knowledge, based on their experience. Some, they don't get it so well. Right? So this is similar. And for if you don't know, then use a default. And then the important part is this will graduate. The longer you use, then you get a better the trust value, updated trust value of the service provider. So essentially, how we improve the trust estimation. Competition relationship, okay? And based on the study, not our study, the social science, the psychology, competition usually is good. So limit free ride. You cannot sleep, okay? And everybody do the work, then you just get a free ride. So this will increase the trust of the people in the group you work with. Collaboration also increase trust value. The two people collaborate with each other, they tend to solve a problem together, work together. Of course, during the course of their study, they develop some bad relation, that's a different thing. Then that also will be recorded, right? But normally, in the normal case, assuming you work out well, everybody conscious, then you develop the trust value, trust to each other. And it's a transitive. Now, it's whenever one service provider is a trust value change, then the trust value of the neighbor, his neighbor also change, right? Because I trust you, you trust him, and so forth. Then if you're in trouble or I change, then of course the whole thing changes. So that's why you need to consider the transitive trust value of a service provider in uniformly provide. Now you say why uniform? Because we don't know much. If you have some domain knowledge a certain way, then by all means, change it. Okay? To all others, service provider intend to compete or collaborate with. Now, rules 1 and 2 show positive correlation between trust and competition and trust and collaboration. And the rule 3 define the propagation of the whole network. Okay? And you heard about the PageRank. That's a web page reputation estimation approach used by Google. You know, it's well known, similar to that. And more people intend to compete or collaborate with a service provider, then the better trustful the service provider. If the service provider is not trustful, people don't want to deal with it, right? All right, I just gave a simple example. Now, then we talk about what kind of expertise if we really want to incorporate service, human factor in develop a trustworthy service-based system in a broader scope. Certainly, computer science, computer engineering, electrical engineering, you know, management engineering, they all need. Network, information assurance and security, you all know. Cognitive science. Besides these, also need psychology, business, and a culture involved. What kind of people you deal with? In this country, and compared to what we have in China, the system you use differently, right? Human differently. People think differently. Then certainly the result also different. You have to understand and incorporate that. Now talk about the future research. There are a lot of future research. Here we only talk about incorporate human factor and develop trustworthy service-based system. First of all, rather than this, I mentioned this is a tough problem, foundation, but it doesn't mean this will block our progress. You still can make some kind of assumption, especially based on your domain knowledge. Now, domain knowledge is the magic word because you produce a system supposed to use it in every domain, but in reality it's not. Right? Whether it's for business domain or engineering domain or traffic or other things, factory. So this will have, in order to have a more accurate type of study and incorporate in the design of a trustworthy system, we need this. We need a general framework. Only framework is useless. We also needed the tool, technique. Here. That's a gold mine of a research study. It's a research problem. All sort of technique, right? Each technique can be a PhD dissertation or you can publish a bunch of papers. But without this, the framework is no use. We have seen a lot of papers talk about framework. No. Unless you can substantiate, and it doesn't have to be your technique. As long as you know what technique available. You cannot say the We don't have such a technique yet. Then fine, then your framework will not be useful, okay? To effectively incorporate variety of relevant human factors. There are many human factors, but we talk about relevant human factors. And another important part is validation. Look at it in all these simple study and so forth. In a lot of the social study, there are a lot of assumptions based on gut feeling, based on the parameter, right? We talk about. How do you know the result good? When you apply to a particular domain, particular application type, you need a validation. Okay? So, I think I over my time. Thank you very much.
We will be very happy to take a couple of questions. Any question? Maybe I have a question. Even for a small system, the system behavior might deviate from its past behavior.
From what?
I mean, for a small system, the small system might deviate from its past behavior.
Yeah.
In other words, it might do something else. But nowadays, we are talking about cloud computing, and we're putting a lot of energy, resource, a lot of things into the platform. And in other words, it could be a disaster if the cloud computing platform deviates from its past behavior. Is there any extra work, extra effort we have to put in to deal with the new issues?
Because of the cloud computing, the problem I mentioned become more acute, more serious, just for that reason. Okay? Because the user, you pay your share of the usage, but you have no control. You just, the cloud provider will tell you, trust me. Do you trust me? If you don't trust me, don't do business with me. But then you have no place to go. Right? So we are really in that environment. That's why we are, there are other research I did not mention, other things we have to do. Don't give people the bad impression we don't trust the service provider. We have to trust them to a certain extent. If you don't trust it, don't deal with them, right? But we want to have a protection for yourself, just for what you say. Okay? Any contract agreement, service agreement you sign, you read it. It's a limited liability. What you pay, they refund you, or maybe double what you pay. But the loss to you may be 1,000 times or irreparable, right? That's why we needed the technique, including, in fact, one area of research, what we're doing is, you use the cloud computing. And nowadays, the cloud computing providers say, I provide you the infrastructure, I provide you the software, I provide you the resource, everything. Instead, you have to go to different places. Then you are in the mercy of the provider. Right?
That's right.
Not only that, all your information, not only your confidential information you give to them, how you use your information, how you plan to your future, they all know. That's why people get so worried about Google, okay? And try to put a limitation. But what can you do? So one of the things, in fact, one way we talk about here, we separate, we don't have to use the whole cloud computing from one provider. Infrastructure I use it, but I don't use your software. And I show a different mechanism. That's a different paper. We have published several papers. Okay?
Thank you very much. So any other questions? Oh, there's a question over there.
Yes.
The main problem, so you have presented the framework for estimating trustworthiness, taking into account human behaviors. I think that the main difficulty comes from the fact that you are combining two things: factual information about the system and the services, and information about humans that are much more difficult to estimate. And so this combination may be very hard. So what is the weight of the various parameters, factual parameters, and the other ones that are much more difficult to estimate?
Okay. What in the frame, in the example I give, or in the we talk about initialization, past record. The past record doesn't mean exclude human factor. Just like a hotel. Okay? When you go out and ask the guest, file a survey form. That's your feedback already. Now, how they use it, that's a different story. But in this case, we already get the user, previous user. But we are not necessarily use that systematically, continuously update the trust value. When you say update the trust value, you not let the service provider to update. Some independent entity, the user association or some community to update. Just like the claimed trust is certain level. But add on the human factor, the feedback primary human factor. And then can be up and down. No, I think we have to incorporate the human factor. But it may not be automatic, but it's certainly you need to continuous update. Do you see in the example, I mentioned that feedback and so forth, QoS, and even the original QoS, based on past record. Past record doesn't mean exclude human factor, user survey. But maybe user survey previously, but not systematically like you plan to have. Okay? In fact, in all these, human factor is a cumulative information, like a reputation. How do you know that person's reputation is good or bad? Really based on past record. Right? And that itself already. But that's not good enough. Because the reputation itself is dynamic. And you need an update. Especially for your critical application, for the cloud computing and so forth. Hey, everybody try to say better, exaggerate their claim for their quality. But how good are they? Or maybe good, but the environment, or they got so many business overloaded and deteriorate. And when you start using for your